To talk about the situation in the Middle East, Nikki Haley. She's former presidential candidate, former U.S. ambassador to the UN, former South Carolina governor, and host of a self-titled podcast, Nikki Haley Live. Thanks so much for being here.
Great to be with you.
Really consequential day, if you think about it, for Israel and what happens next. How do you see this?
First of all, very different than the Iranian strike that we saw in April. Think about basically how that happened. In April, Iran did strikes, first time they ever did it directly, but they did drones first, which was very much giving notice to everybody that this was getting ready to happen. Didn't really want any damage, just wanted to send a signal. This time, well over 150 ballistic missiles, no warning, only 12 minutes for them to get there. Iran wanted this to hurt. Let's be clear, they've been caught flat-footed. For a long time, they said these are their proxies. They said that they had nothing to do with it, but these are all mobsters, whether it's the Houthis, whether it's Hamas, whether it's Hezbollah, whether it's what's happening in Syria or Iraq, and the head mob boss is Iran, and Iran is flat-footed, and right now they're trying to play in any way that they can. But don't make no mistake, they're not encouraged by this. This was reactionary, and they're just trying to stop the bleeding.
You've dealt with the Israelis a lot. You dealt with them here at the UN. If you were to guess what they do next, what do you think it would be?
They're not going to stop, and they shouldn't stop. I think what you're seeing is, you know, it's funny to see Jake Sullivan or even Joe Biden say, oh, we were with Israel the whole way. No, Israel did this in spite of them. Israel was tired of them saying pull back. They were tired of saying de-escalate. They were tired of everything else. They saw what Hezbollah was getting ready to do, and they knocked them out before they had a chance to do it. Now the U.S. is stepping up to be beside them, but make no mistake, Israel does not trust the U.S. Israel does not trust Biden and Harris because they haven't been there. What I think is going to happen next is Israel is going to continue to make sure that the north is safe enough for the 60,000 Israelis to come back. You're going to see them start to hit the Houthis over in Yemen. They look at this is the time to go ahead and take out all the threats while they can.
It's interesting. The Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, had an op-ed published today in Foreign Affairs saying America's strategy of renewal. The Biden administration's strategy has put the United States in a much stronger geopolitical position today than it was 4 years ago. Can you definitively say that's not true? And I know you endorsed the former president. Can you definitively say that their policy would be better for the Middle East than the Biden-Harris policy?
Blinken knows it's not true, but Harris and Biden need to know it's not true. They are the reason that this all happened from the very beginning going to Afghanistan. But if you look at it, they haven't even been a good friend to Israel. They've constantly lectured them. They've constantly told them what they can and can't do. They've done the same thing with Ukraine, not letting Ukraine use the missiles to go into Russia. All of these things have led to distrust with our friends. And so you look at the time during Trump, there were no wars. There were no conflicts. And the reason is at least our allies knew where we stood. With Biden and Harris, they never know where we stand.
You mentioned the April attacks. And before that, there was a lot of warning from the administration with one word. Take a listen.
I have one word. Don't.
And what's the message to Iran?
Don't.
Israel may be now launching a limited operation into Lebanon. Are you aware of that? Are you comfortable with their plans?
I'm more aware than you might know, and I'm comfortable with them stopping. We should have a ceasefire now.
That was the message recently, but since then, you know, all the don'ts. Since that happened, the Iranians launched that barrage on Israel in April, accelerated uranium enrichment program. They're charged with hacking the U.S. presidential election, both campaigns, and then sending information from the Trump campaign to the Biden-Harris campaign. And then U.S. intel revealing this Iranian plot to assassinate the former president, let alone other officials in the former administration.
Which I was one of them.
Yeah. So how do you see that geopolitically? You know, and is this a campaign issue that you think the former president is going to hit on?
This is a massive campaign issue. And first of all, it's not just Iran doing that. Look at the aggression coming from Russia, from China, from North Korea. All of them know that the U.S. is weak, and that's playing out. But what else did Joe Biden do? While he said don't to our allies on what they could and couldn't do, and he said the words don't to Iran, he lifted the sanctions on Iran. He allowed the money to flow. He basically continued to dictate to our allies what they could and couldn't do. I'm glad Israel did. I'm glad Israel went forward and said, enough with Biden and Harris. We're going to protect ourselves because we can't count on them to help us do that. And
last thing, politics. There were a lot of Republicans who looked to you and said maybe that would have been a good choice for VP. Tonight, JD Vance steps into head-to-head. What advice would you give him? You've been critical of some of the things he said in the past. What would you tell him tonight?
Keep your eye on the ball. Know who your audience is. Your audience is not the Republican primary base. Your audience is suburban women, college-educated, independents, and conservative Democrats. They are the ones that are going to decide this general election. That's who you focus on for the next 35 days.
Thank you very much for coming in. We'll check out the podcast.
Thanks so much.